Before we begin today's story, take a moment to subscribe if you enjoy emotionally driven stories that stay with you long after the video ends. These aren't loud or rushed, they settle quietly into your heart. And if you stay until the end, this one may linger longer than you expect. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. That evening began like any other. I had just finished tending the rose bushes in my front yard when the phone rang. It was my neighbor from a few houses down. Her voice sounded rushed. An unexpected shift had come up at the clinic, and she needed someone to watch her son for a few hours. I agreed without hesitation. Her son was 14, quiet, polite, thoughtful beyond his years. There was something familiar about him, something that reminded me of my own child at that age. I brewed chamomile tea, changed into comfortable clothes, and cleared the dining table for homework. The house felt calm, wrapped in the warm glow of early evening sunlight through lace curtains. When he arrived, he was slightly out of breath, backpack hanging from one shoulder. He thanked me right away. I offered him orange juice and a few oatmeal cookies from the night before. He smiled shyly and opened his books. His assignment was about civic responsibility, community, kindness, shared duty. As we read through his notes together, the ideas came back to me naturally. He listened closely, asking careful questions, writing small thoughts in the margins. Every now and then I noticed him glance at me and then quickly look away. I assumed it was just teenage awkwardness, the kind that comes with growing up and not yet knowing how to say what you're thinking. When I shared a story about volunteering and how simply listening can matter more than advice, his expression shifted slightly, like the idea had reached somewhere deeper than the page. "Are you okay?" I asked gently. Jacob nodded at first, then hesitated. "Yeah, I'm just thinking." I gave him time. Silence, when it's patient, often invites honesty. "You explain things differently," he said after a moment. "Not like teachers rushing through a lesson. You explain them like they matter." "They do matter," I replied with a small smile. "Understanding people and responsibility, that stays useful your whole life." He looked down at his notebook, tracing the edge of the page with his finger. Most adults don't really listen. They just wait for their turn to talk. The comment was too thoughtful to ignore. I leaned back slightly. Listening is harder than talking. That's why fewer people practice it. He gave a quiet, knowing nod and returned to his work, but the air between us had changed, more open, more trusting. We finished the assignment sooner than expected. I checked his answers, and he corrected a few lines himself without being asked. Careful. Intentional. The kind of student who didn't just want the right answer, he wanted the right understanding. When it was time to leave, he packed his bag slowly, like he wasn't in a hurry to break the calm. At the door, he paused again. "Thank you," he said, not casually but sincerely. "You're always welcome," I told him. "You did the hard part. I just helped a little." He stepped outside, then turned back. "I hope I can come again, even if there's not much homework." I smiled. "We'll see what your mom says." He laughed softly and headed down the path, the evening sky fading into deeper blue. After the door closed, the house felt unusually quiet. Not empty, just reflective. I poured the rest of the tea and sat by the window, thinking about how rare it is to feel genuinely heard, and how powerful it can be when someone finally does. The next afternoon, Marlene called again. Another shift change. Another few hours of help needed. I said yes before she even finished asking. This time, I prepared a little earlier, cleared the table, set out 2 mugs, warmed the house with the smell of fresh cookies. I told myself it was simple hospitality, nothing more. Still, I noticed I was looking at the clock more than usual. Jacob arrived right on time, more relaxed than before. His shoulders weren't as tense. He greeted me with an easy smile and sat down without hesitation. That day's homework was literature, a classic play about loyalty, power, and difficult choices. As we read a passage aloud, he stopped me halfway through. "He knows it's wrong," Jacob said about one character, "but he still does it because everyone around him makes it sound right." "Pressure can make wrong choices feel reasonable," I said. "That's why character matters most when decisions are hard." He looked thoughtful. "Nobody talks about that part. Just the action, not the pressure." I smiled. The pressure is the real story most of the time. We talked longer than the assignment required, about courage, influence, and how small decisions shape bigger paths. His insights were careful and sincere. He didn't speak just to fill silence. He spoke when he had something real to say. At one point he asked, "Did you ever want to be something different than what you became?" The question surprised me. Yes, I admitted. I once wanted to be a writer. What happened? Life got practical. Responsibilities got louder than dreams. He considered that quietly. Practical isn't always the same as right. The sentence landed deeper than he probably knew. When the homework was finished, neither of us rushed to stand. The conversation drifted. Goals, doubts, the strange feeling of being unnoticed even when you're doing your best. "You make it feel okay to care about things," he said finally. "It was always okay," I answered softly. "Some people just need permission to believe that." Outside, the light was beginning to fade again. Another evening gently closing, but this time, it felt like something meaningful was slowly opening too. By the third visit, our routine had settled into something comfortable. No formality, no stiffness, just warm drinks, open books, and honest conversation. But that afternoon, Jacob didn't take his homework out. "Can we just talk today?" he asked. "Of course," I said. We sat by the window with hot chocolate, watching the late sunlight stretch across the floor. He asked about my childhood, what I loved when I was younger, what I thought I'd become. No one had asked me those questions in a long time, not with real curiosity. I told him the truth, that I once dreamed of writing stories, that I believed words could change how people felt, that somewhere along the way, I convinced myself it was too late to begin. "It's not," he said immediately. "No hesitation. No doubt. You explain things like a storyteller already." I laughed softly. "Explaining isn't the same as creating." "I think it is," he replied. "Creating just lasts longer." A week later, he arrived holding a small notebook instead of his backpack. "This is for you," he said, handing it to me, "in case you decide to start." The cover was plain, the first page blank. Somehow, that blankness felt like an invitation instead of pressure. We sat outside under the maple tree and talked one last time before his schedule changed, and the visits naturally came to an end. He spoke about wanting to become someone dependable, someone who listens carefully when others speak. "You already are," I told him. When he left, it didn't feel sad. It felt complete, like a lesson fully learned on both sides. That night, I opened the notebook at my kitchen table. The house was quiet, but not lonely. For the first time in years, the silence felt supportive, like space being made. I picked up a pen and began to write. Not for approval, not for perfection, just truth. And for the first time in a very long while, the story felt like it belonged to me. The days after that felt different. Not louder, not busier, just clearer. I started writing each morning at the same small corner of the table. At first it was only a few lines. Memories. Observations. Moments I used to overlook. I didn't judge the words. I just let them arrive. Something unexpected happened. The more I wrote, the more present I felt in my own life. Weeks later, Marlene stopped by with a thank you card and a small plant for the garden. She told me Jacob had joined the school writing club, that he'd volunteered to help younger students with reading. "He says listening is a kind of leadership," she said with a smile. "I'm not sure where he got that from." I smiled back but didn't answer. That evening, I sat on the porch with my notebook, watching the light fade the way it always had. Only now I noticed the details. The color shifts. The quiet movement. The way ordinary moments carry meaning when you slow down enough to see them. Some people come into your life briefly, not to stay, but to remind you who you are. He came for homework help. I found my voice again. And sometimes that's how purpose returns. Not with noise, not with grand events, but with a conversation, a blank page, and the courage to begin. Months passed, and the notebook slowly filled. Some pages held full scenes. Others carried only a paragraph or a single honest sentence. But together, they formed something steady, proof that starting late is still starting. One afternoon, I received a short message from Marlene. A photo attached. Jacob standing at the front of a small classroom, reading from a printed page, a little nervous but smiling. Caption. Asterisk first public reading today. Asterisk. I looked at that photo for a long time. Not because I felt proud of myself, but because I understood something simple and powerful. Encouragement travels. It moves from one heart into another, then keeps going where you'll never see it reach. That night, I wrote a line at the top of a fresh page. Asterisk. No kindness is ever wasted, especially the quiet kind. Asterisk. If you're listening to this and wondering whether your patience matters, whether your listening matters, whether your small support changes anything, it does. You may never see the full result, but somewhere, someone stands a little taller because you took the time to care. And sometimes that is the whole story.